All right.
Cool.
So I will say I have a bit of a headache today for some reason. So if I seem a little foggy, that's why. But
Okay.
I've got my water and all that, so
Okay.
I'll be feeling better soon.
Okay. Yeah. I had lunch a little while ago and just actually taking a little break from work, rebuilding my website, and kind of making sure I have decent outlines for all the different coaching products I'm going to offer. So that's kind of what I've been working on since last week or so. I hope to have the website done by the end of this week. Um, so yeah.
You made kind of a big announcement on Facebook that I commented on, and I didn't know if
Yeah.
you wanted to talk about that a little bit here.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said in the post, I did my initial coach training in like the end of 2019. So it's been 4 years of um, just continued learning, and it's a weird field that's full of a lot of bullshit and a lot of marketing and a lot of like tangents and like weird cul-de-sacs that you come to, stuff like that. Um, and it so because there's not like regulation and like there definitely are plenty of places that teach coaching in a legitimate way, and there's a lot of places that don't. And they're really just out to sell you something that might not actually help you create a career or give you the skills to have a career. So yeah, I did my initial training in 2019, and it was with the Health Coach Institute, which had really, really snazzy marketing. And um, I came away from that not feeling very confident and not really knowing what coaching was and what coaching was not, and not really trusting them as an authority of like I just felt like I wasn't getting the whole picture. And so I spent like the last 4 years continuing to educate myself, working with other coaches, reading lots of books and things like that, and having more experiences and training to so I could feel comfortable and confident with those skill sets. And through all that, it's also been like, who do I want to coach? I could help everybody. I could help, there's like, am I gonna do health coaching, right? There's a lot of Americans out there that are unhealthy. There's a lot of people that I know and clients that I know that are unhealthy. Do I want to help people, with changing their diet and their lifestyle? And if that's true, like I could literally help everybody, men, women, whatever, kind of the thought as a new coach was like, oh, I don't want to make it too narrow, right? Because they'll be excluding potential clients, the people who want to pay me money. And so yeah, I feel like there's just been a huge debate and trouble or lack of clarity inside of myself of like, who do I want to serve and why? And along with like continuing training and educating myself. And so it's just last year started to bring a lot more clarity, and but still is kind of flip-flopping a lot. Last year I started really engaging um, more with men's work. I had done some stuff over the pandemic with the Mankind Project. Last year, I did two big retreats. One was specifically for men. Um, and so, yeah, it just felt like getting more and more clear. And um, yeah, what was it? Yeah, my trip to Chicago when I did the landmark thing, and there was a I don't know that I shared this story with you, but there was an exhibit about like Native Americans in there, but it was told from their perspective. It was like modern indigenous people or descendants of, the old Native Americans. Um, and it was their exhibit talking about like we their philosophy of like we have responsibilities as humans and not rights. The United States has this Constitution and this Bill of Rights, but indigenous people believe themselves to have responsibilities to be caretakers for the planet and for each other, right? And I had heard that before, but it really just hit me hard on that trip for some reason. And that combined with things that were talked about in Landmark really just somehow it just clicked in my head, like just commit to working with men. You've been talking about it, you have been working with some men, and stop flip-flopping, stop switching between spirituality and health, and just focus on one thing. And if you want to do other things in the future, fine, but just let's pick this. It feels right. Um, so yeah, it felt really good. And um, I think a lot of that decision comes down to me being a man, and that just being a group I feel like I can serve the best. Like my experience with how I feel as a man versus society's, expectations or definitions of a man and manhood. My experiences, with my father and high school and all of those kinds of things, and addiction, feeling scared of commitment, all those things. Like I've specifically worked through all of those things. So I have unique personal experiences to help other men who want to move in the same direction that I have. So it just feels like because of that, I'm more qualified to help other men and those people versus some other demographic. So yeah.
I you know, your men's work is definitely what called me to reach out to you.
Yeah.
And I think that it's such a timely thing to support, because I do feel like it's so right now. It's so poignant, and I could go through example and example and example of how that continues to show up in my work with my friends, with my women clients, where they share with me what's going on. And it's like the stories about men in their life tend to be kind of the same,
Yeah.
like the same stories. And
Yeah.
so, and kind of the baseline. And this really like, I have to take myself out of the like angry feminist, because I definitely have been in that role before, and now I've softened a lot because I've, raising boys, but also trying to understand the dynamic that we want to be in and we're not in. And um how do we get there, and why have we gotten here, and
Yeah.
I think that from what I gather, it's like men are being asked, are being called upon to do men's work right now, while it's women's role right now to sit back and support men doing men's work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's kind of sticky in like that language, but I think that it's just such an important time to have for men to have spaces for men to go to.
Yeah.
I think that's really what I at the end of the day, like, that's really what it comes down to in so many situations that I hear of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really agree with you. I feel like the men's work movement really started in the late 80s. And a lot of good things happened there, but I think it was really just kind of a sheer numbers game of back in the 80s, there were so many men that had grown up in a particular culture and also not having the internet, as we know it today. Um, and now culture and the existence of the internet have, and like just like the the greater level of acceptability of homosexuality, talking about gender, and all those things, like it's really children who have been born after 1990, um, like everyone is just the culture of the internet, or some cultures of the internet, are just so much more open and forward thinking, and that it's like I said, a numbers game. There's so many more men and young men that haven't grown up with the same old mindset, and there's really a hunger for um, leadership, and um, there's a hunger for, hey, teach me what the fuck I'm supposed to do and who I'm supposed to be,
Mhm.
because there's really almost a complete absence of it. I feel like in the past, like up to 1980, and well, that I'm just picking a number. I should do research and find, maybe some more concrete time frames there. But like young men were told and did learn what was expected of them and who they were supposed to be. There was a kind of an unspoken but controlled and consistent narrative, right? And that is all fallen apart, right? It's fallen apart with basically more space for other voices and other narratives. And also, in addition to that, it's been the rise of female power, right? Essentially, women are not confined to the home. They're not confined to be raising children and cooking food. They can have extremely successful careers, especially now with the internet, even more so than ever before. Needless to say, own property, have a bank account, and own drive their own goddamn car, right? So in addition to the space opening up and hearing more voices of like, what is a man? What am I supposed to do? What is right? And what's a good model? Um, over here on the other side are women that don't need you to fulfill that role anymore. You're not being asked by women or by society to fulfill that same role of put on the suit, go to the office, do the 9 to 5, bring home the paycheck, and she'll cook the food and have the kids ready and all that stuff. Like that just is not, there's not just a plug and play answer for you if you have a dick for you to go and do that, right? There's plenty of places where that still does exist in America, and certainly more so in other countries around the world. Those traditional roles are still very prevalent, but with women not being locked into their role, it disturbs men. What's my role? If now women have the freedom to play different roles, men are like, oh, my role is kind of taken away. I don't play the other side of this role. They're doing this other thing. What do I do? Right? So there's just a big question mark. And young men are looking for answers, and older men are looking for answers, and women have become empowered to the point where and have the autonomy and freedom to say, I don't want you, and I don't want to deal with the crap that you are outputting, right?
Mhm.
And I don't have to. um Women are suffering, like not only from violence and aggression and verbal abuse and everything that they always have, but they're also suffering because they want real loving partners. They want partnership. Women want partnership, and they want partnership that is respectful, fulfilling, equal, right? Like all of these things. And men haven't learned how to do that and have a new role and definition for who they are and what their place is in the world.
Mhm.
So to summarize it all up, yes, this is just a huge opportunity for men to redefine an opportunity, a necessity for men to redefine who we are, what our roles are, what we can do, what we should be doing, and it's kind of like a lot of men are just in free fall and don't know what to do. So they're seeking answers and seeking leadership. They're not going to their dads or their grandparents anymore because one, men don't talk and men don't have deep conversations like this, or if they do, they're few and far between, right? So advice, leadership, consistent teaching, like legitimate teaching of what you're supposed to do is just not there. And so, oh, we've got, the summation of all human knowledge in my pocket. Let's ask the internet.
Mhm,
And here we find the opportunity for people like me and others to take the lead and teach men like, hey, this is the way, you know.
mhm,
Uh, so yes, now is a very special and poignant time.
mhm. I think, well, I have so many things I could say about what you just said, but um, I think that to celebrate men and the contribution that men make to women, to the world, to the earth, to all of these things, right? It's I have really learned over the last couple of years in my own teaching, like the body based
Mhm.
understanding and like bottom up approach to well-being, mental health, versus the top-down approach, right? Like, what am I thinking about? Then I feel it. It's the other way around, where it's like, what am I feeling? What does that tell me? And I feel like men have always had that contribution to our understanding collectively if we allow men to be men in their men spaces, right? Where, like, if I want to talk about like mental health, I don't foresee or I don't envision in my head like men sitting around gushing about their feelings, right? I see men like going to play basketball together in like this physical way, like a physical connection so that they can connect in that way versus like I'm going to talk about my feelings. And I mean, that's not to say men can't sit around and talk about their feelings or they should or shouldn't or whatever. I
Yeah,
just think that to celebrate the contribution that the masculine can bring is that physicality
yeah,
is there. And
yeah,
it's so innate in them. And that if I feel like if men had just a little bit of like pathway guidance, it could really open up so much of their possibility, you know. And then the other thing I wanted to say about that was like, you're absolutely right that, in so many ways our rituals have disappeared. That's one thing that I've really been clued into as well is like as a woman, physiologically speaking, I am tapped into the cycles of the moon through bleeding, through just the site like being living cyclically and how men don't have access to that.
yeah,
So, you know, and like there's a very physical, like I can see it going from girlhood to womanhood. There's blood, right? It's red and you can taste it, touch it, smell it, feel it, whatever. Where like what do boys have going into manhood? And that's like a true poverty in our culture, right? Is
yeah,
the
yeah,
lack of ritual and understanding
yeah,
when we're moving from one ending, like we're ending something and moving into a new beginning. How do
yeah,
we mark that?
yeah. That's very true, and I 100% agree with you that that is missing, and that is really important um, to have that designation to mark a phase of growth and to talk about expectations and talk about like how things are now different. Really helpful, really important, and women have that built in biologically through their body and the maturation of their body, right? And it's like, hey, things are different now. This is like pregnancy is possible for you now, and you have to care for yourself differently, and you have to be responsible in a different way than you did before. Um, you're right, there is no such thing for men. And going back to the time that we are living in, it's really interesting because I would say that, in our culture, at least here in the United States, I don't know that there ever was a like, designated time or date where it's like, okay, you're a man now. I think people did have those conversations more back then. But I think also that because of how the times were economically in the past, and how basically um the expectancy of the human lifespan and our level of sophistication with medical care, it was basically like you have to grow up fast. Like you can die between, let's talk about 1900. You could die between 40 and you'll be lucky if you make it to 75 or 80, right? Um, so it's like if you're gonna be if you could die at 40, you need to be an adult and have accomplished shit and be doing stuff before then. So when you and also like taking care of a family, it was like everybody's got to contribute here. So you're 12, you're 13, get your hands dirty. What can you do? Get a job. There weren't these, there were, there were child labor laws were not the same back then, right? And so I think economically, young boys were expected to grow up and take on responsibility much earlier. And it was shown to them like why taking on responsibility is necessary and important. It's like, hey, you have to eat. We all have to eat. You know, you can't just be sitting around. And um so yeah, I think that was a legitimate thing. And now, I feel like childhood has extended to like 25, right? When childhood was maybe over at 12, 13, 14, 15 at the upper range before. Now you could be an irresponsible child until 25 or even later.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about that as you were talking. Like, it's really hard for our 2024 brains to think about what it was like in the 1900s, right?
Uh,
And I think, we've decided now, or it's pretty common knowledge, I think, that the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 25. I
yes.
talk to my children a lot about that. They'll be like, "When can I get married? When can I?" And I'm like, "Not you can't make any like real logic decision until you're 25, you know." And I'm like, I know they say 18, but like really your
uh,
logic brain is not developed yet. But
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, and before we were even talking about that, I was thinking how our brains have to be so much different today just because of the advance of technology that has moved so quickly. It's like we can't expect our bodies to evolve that quickly.
Right.
So how is our brain, like what's our brain's possibility for that? So I wonder, maybe the prefrontal cortex was developed sooner, way back then. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
no,
gosh.
I mean, it would be hard
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah, we probably I don't think that there's any way for us to have that data. Possibly. Or I don't know, maybe if we had a real neuroscientist, neurobiologist here talking to us, he could tell us genetically the brain has been developing the same for thousands of years and it doesn't reach maturity till 25. And they can probably tell that, but maybe that's not true and we don't know. We'd have to
Well,
talk.
it's like hard to know too because there's a lot of other external factors that like maybe your prefrontal cortex didn't need to be developed. There was no logic to be
Yeah.
to be had. It was like, well, of course you're going to get married because and like have children because that was part of providing to the community. Was it wasn't like today where people really get to choose, like
Yeah, we didn't
it
have.
wasn't a choice.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, there wasn't much of a choice. It was kind of forced upon you. I
Yeah.
think there might, if we're talking about the science here, there's probably a route to study that because there are still very much people, children that are raised today that are raised in difficult circumstances that have to become mature and responsible much sooner. And it's usually people who are less economically advantaged. People who are poorer are forced to grow up much quicker than people who have means and have money. They have the luxury of sitting around and taking their time to actually think about what do they want to do and how do they want to spend the time, when a poorer family might be like, you cannot think, you need to put your body to work immediately, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
That's like the book from, I think her name's Tracy, but Rest is Resistance, and she talks about how, people who are forced to work don't have time to dream, and it's
Yeah.
really important to have time to dream because that allows you to move in different ways,
Yep.
I just read something, and I've heard it before, but I heard it again recently, that's like we're not in the same boat, but we are in the same storm. And
Yeah.
not everyone had, like, some people have a yacht and some people have like a raft or something like that. And it's like that makes a lot of sense to me, where it's like, yeah, not everyone has the tools to like
Right.
um supersede what they've been born into.
Right.
We always love the story of like the underdog, succeeding. So there's something inside of us deep that connects to how that's not possible for everyone.
Mhm. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
wouldn't appreciate those stories as much if we knew it was a rare occurrence.
Yeah. 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 There's definitely, that's true. Very true. Yeah.
So something else that you said earlier on about who like what kind of led you to choosing who to work with
Mhm.
reminded me a lot of massage school, and how a lot of times they, really push to decide your niche. Like, who are you going to work with? And I have struggled with that in all of my years as a massage therapist because, well, for one, I don't want to exclude people per se, but two, um, I mean, it's a numbers game. Like, if I'm gonna exclude a certain amount of people, it also excludes a certain amount of business.
Yeah.
And I've really, I mean, it wasn't necessarily intentional on the beginning of this, but I've really more so chosen a path that I wanted to, like, I use my feet to massage, so I've chosen barefoot massage that can encompass a lot of different kinds of people, but it does exclude different kinds of people. Like, I'm not going to work with an 80-year-old, like I'm not going to work with a 12-year-old. It's like
Right.
there is exclusions, but I can't, it's also really difficult for me to say that this kind of massage is best for healthy individuals, because like that word means a lot of different things to people. um so I feel you in, it's hard to like lock down a certain demographic.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a wider lens to look at that versus like just serve one population. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know how like helpful that is actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really actually kind of an advanced piece of advice. And by
Yeah.
that, by that, I mean like that advice is true and good, but you have to be in the right place to apply it.
Yes.
When you're starting out, like I honestly, I came out of massage school and I was like, I don't want to go, I don't want to study myofascial release. I don't want to dive into some, craniosacral, some advanced technique therapy and specialize right away. I was like, I I need to feel my hands and feel myself in this role and really integrate this into my identity to
Mhm.
become a massage therapist, to be comfortable engaging with clients face to face, one on one, actually caring about them, expressing care, and doing a good job with the basic skill set. Like I was like, I need to feel good in this role, and I knew that like being in that space for a period of time was going to help inform me of what I want to do because I don't know yet. I don't know. It's like so seeing clients and seeing people come in with certain problems and certain clients um, will showed me like who I like to work with, who I don't like to work with, what's easy for me, what's hard for me, where I really want to help, or where I really see people struggling, and I feel like I can meet that need more,
Mhm.
you know? So it was like the experience of being there helped me narrow, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And I would say it's the same for coaching. Like it's been, like I said, 4 years now. I've done a lot of coaching and I've been paid a lot. I mean, I've been paid a lot of times, not a lot of money, but I've seen a lot of people, I've coached a lot of people, and I've coached a lot of different people. I mean, single mothers going through divorce. I worked with a woman. It was, you know, we did some coaching sessions leading up to her court date for custody and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I have worked with a middle-aged woman who had several kids and had been divorced for a long time and was dealing with like their kids in this new phase of life,
Mhm.
right? I've worked with a woman with health challenges. I've worked with um, men, let me think. I've worked with men struggling with career. I've worked with men struggling with money, you know? And so me being in this space and letting myself connect with my identity as a coach and actually doing some of the work helped me be like, okay, I did all right there, but this didn't feel like there was no pull in that direction. You know, I did well, I served them the best that I could.
Mhm.
Right, great. And there wasn't this big pull in this direction. And there was pull over here. I really enjoyed engaging with this person. Not that I like didn't like that client or anything like that. I was just I feel like I'm more effective and more drawn to this area. And I don't know that you can I don't know that you can know that just by thinking about it. Maybe it's just me, but I'm like an experiential learner. I need to really have an experience that informs my decision making
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, I'm in a coaching program right now,
yeah,
and we're like in the meat and potatoes of like how to organize a arc of coaching sessions. So like if it's a 10 session arc, or if it's like or like how do you set a goal within one session, things like that, really like tangible tools.
yeah,
And so I kind of wanted to go back to what you were saying about like how there's some real schmarmy stuff going on in the coaching world. And do
yeah.
you follow, I think her name's Samoan.
Simone Grace Soul.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
She does such a great job of like really lighting up the bullshit parts of that profession. And I've only got like one toe in it at this point, but I
yeah,
can like from the very beginning I was like I don't want to be a coach because I already know like all those things.
yeah,
And now that I'm like in it, I'm like, oh wow, there's some like powerful stuff here that
yeah,
comes from a coaching session that you cannot get from
yeah,
like psychotherapy or any other kind of like talk based type of thing that's like way different than what we see or understand from like a coach.
yeah.
And I think that I don't know what that means for the future of coaching, and I don't know what that means for people's well-being or whatever, but like I too am an experiential learner, and so it's like being able to be coached is part of learning to be a coach.
100%.
And it's like I I see I see how that has to be part of it, because
Yeah,
like I'm not in the live classes because I it's always like whenever I have my big kids at home.
yeah,
And so I'm over here in my own little bubble learning how to be a coach, and it's like okay, there is so much value and benefit to being live, but also being like in with the other people coaching and being coached all at the same time,
yeah.
that I have to do that stuff outside of the class anyway. But I feel sort of like I'm getting to see the value of that because I don't get it in the moment when everyone else is. Um, but yeah, it's really really crucial that you're like working the program or working the material for yourself at the same time as you're learning how to do it with other people.
I agree. It really is. And I feel like um getting being coached by an excellent coach who really has whose heart is really present in their work is very important and really powerful.
Mhm.
Um, I think I think some of the problems are because there isn't a standardization and because there isn't a governing body or legislation over all this. It's really the Wild West. And it's right now there's big dollar signs and economic pressures that are leading people to like, oh, I could do this, same with real estate, right? And so it's like it coaching is powerful. It is helpful. You're right. It can do things that other modalities can't necessarily do in the same way. And to find a great, ethical, legitimate coach can be tricky right now because the water is just so polluted with people trying to make $1 million and sell a course when their real intention is making money. Their real intention is not helping people. It's
Mhm.
not acting with integrity. It's not developing their character. It's not actually to make a difference in someone's life or the world. They can say that can be the front, but they really just want those dollar signs, and
Mhm.
it's unfortunate.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of industries that are like that, right? I mean, massage was like that for a long time, and there's still people who believe and want massage to return to the Wild West where there's
yeah,
no,
yeah,
um, guidance or whatever.
right.
Yoga is like that,
Mhm.
reflexology is like that,
Mhm. Yeah,
and a lot of those people who want that to go, like the what is the word I want to say, like the guidance. It's like the professionalism, the standards. They
yeah,
want that to be open and fluid so that a lot of various things can fit within that. And, um, you know, like pre COVID me, I would have said something like, that's wrong. And we all have to have like these standards of care. And then post COVID me says, yes. And who's making these rules? And are they considering a lot of people? Because, and I say that because when COVID happened, the massage industry was like, well, I don't know what to do. And
yeah,
I was so embarrassed and I was so ashamed of like the lack of leadership in our industry. And I just feel it's like I'm not going the opposite direction to be like, okay, anybody who wants to be a massage therapist can do that.
right.
But I do think that there's also limits to the standards too, right? So like, how do we know that people are acting in integrity, and how do we know that people are being ethical, and who's following up with that, and like who's making the rules, and who's managing those people? And I just think the structures are just they need a reevaluation or something.
Yeah, yeah, you're definitely right.
Like
Yeah,
the doula world is like that too, which I also
yeah,
dabble in and know a lot about. And there's a lot of doulas and midwives who don't want regulation to come in. And understanding how physiological birth happens, I can understand that. I can understand why they say they don't want regulation and meddling with it. And you can't be all the way wild, wild west either, right? So, like, where is the balance in this?
yeah, yeah. It's tricky. It's definitely tricky. You
Yeah.
want it to be you want it to be open enough to allow for some style and interpretation, but not open so much to have someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard.
In my coaching program, they talk a lot about how they say we want you to feel your way through this. they're like, we can give you step by step dialogue, how to talk to somebody. But
Yeah,
then when does that become like I'm a robot and this is how I
yeah,
have a dialogue? It's like, no, there
yeah,
does need to be some humanness to it.
yeah,
And so that means intuition. That means flexing and flowing with who's sitting across
yeah.
from you. No.
My coach training was really similar. It was like it was very much based on this like go from session one to session two to session three with this arc of like progressive development of the individual and leading them through a thing that they are learning or absorbing. And that's good. That structure is good. But if you don't, and if you're, they also were teaching us like, do so, here's the script. Like, let's just start here. You just need to start talking to someone and actually coaching someone, and you're gonna feel nervous and scared and unsure in the beginning. So just read from the script. Just feel it out, feel yourself in that role and trade places with another person. I think where my program failed, and I think where many others fail, is they don't know. I wasn't seeing, I wasn't, whoa.
What
Uh,
is that?
I'm not sure. It does that. If you do thumbs up, it'll do a big thumbs up.
Oh.
Down. I don't know what other things are in there too, or why they decided to incorporate these features.
Well, I wonder if you said something that meant celebrate, like balloons?
Hand up in the air or something. I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's physical gestures that trigger it, I believe. Uh, anyway, right. So I was talking about like the the like a what was that gesture? Like a mermaid or something?
I was trying to be like a party, like
Yeah,
we're
it's dancing.
celebrating.
Yeah. Maybe there'll be like bulb lights that come on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I feel like where my program really struggled and failed, and I think where a lot of other programs do too, is going from this timeline of okay, in session one we're going to do this, and two we're going to do this, and three we're going to do this, and here's the type of conversations you're going to have. I don't feel like I was really taught the just the fundamental coaching tools, and wasn't taught to practice those. And so it was like 4 years of reading books, working with other coaches, just just fucking stumbling my way through it, just like taking on people, finding people, and just like having conversations and trying skills and trying different things and be like, that didn't feel good. That didn't feel like I was really coaching well. That just felt like two people, two random ass people. We could have been at a fucking bus stop, you know? um, so a lot of my process was just making mistakes, but there was learning along the way too. And the fundamental, like what the fundamental skills, number one is listening.
Yeah.
Listening and being able to accurately reflect what the person has said back to them.
Hmm.
And then also having the assertiveness to share your perspective without sharing your opinion, but sharing perspective and not being judgmental or judging them, right? Or coming off as a judge or sharing something that comes off as a judgment.
Hmm.
You know, those are really, really fundamental. Listening is so important. And I was learning that through these other experiences of working with a couple of coaches, reading Coactive Coaching was a fantastic book. Um, and then, like I said, stumbling through it. Um, and if you don't ever build those skills, you're not going to be a confident coach. You can have all the scripts, all the fucking structure in the world, and you're gonna feel like an imposter. You're not gonna have that foundation that it's like it's really what it's like is like a musician learning how to play the notes, right? It's only after you really integrate your hands with the keyboard or the strings and know how to read music, and you get so familiar with the strings or with the keyboard and know how to play that you can start to improvise, right? You don't just start improvising a beautiful jazz song. You don't know where the fucking keys are, right? you have to know the foundational skill set and then you can improvise, right? And that's where that license needs to exist. An excellent coach is going to be way off script and maybe do something really strange or crazy or weird or seemingly outrageous, but they have the experience and know this, have the foundational skills and know this is going to be very effective for them, you know. Um,
Yeah, I also think that I something I try to remind myself of is at the end of the day, most of us humans are not being heard by other humans, and that's like a really valuable thing that needs to happen. And if I never become a coach, if I can work on my listening skills and my reflection skills and my consenting skills and perspective giving skills, that's good for me. Like
yeah,
that, I feel like that's being within integrity as any kind of service-based professional who's trying to act within integrity and help humans.
yeah, yes, 100%. I mean, um, I feel proud of myself for the listening skills that I have built, and most people don't know how to listen. And to have someone listen to you in an active, empathetic way can be profoundly healing.
Right.
Profoundly healing. I mean, I have this amazing story and example from my life, from my former partner, when we started dating back when I lived in Hawaii. On our like first official date, we were walking around town. There was like an art, like a I don't know what you call it. It was called the art walk, where street vendors are out selling their art, and there's some music and food and stuff like that. And that night, just walking through the chaos of a little downtown art fair thing, she listened to me so intently. I could tell she was so quiet inside and her heart was so present. She listened to everything that I had to say with complete attention. Um, Not that she was like, you know, falling head over heels in me and thought I was some amazing person. She was in her own self, steady and solid in her own self, or concept of self and foundation inside herself, and listening to me. And it was shocking, actually. I don't recall ever being listened to like that before. It was profound. And we were in a noisy, busy area with a lot of things going on. And this was a person that I'd never really spent time with before. And it was just instantly like a complete new and novel experience in my life to be listened to with that amount of depth and care. It's powerful.
Well, I really heard you say, and I just clung to this idea that you said she was so quiet in her heart that she
Yeah,
could really hear you. And
yeah,
I think that's worth repeating because that's why people are like that's why people say you should meditate, you should yoga or whatever the case may be to quiet yourself
yeah,
enough to know where you end and another person begins, but what is yours and what is someone else's, what is like do you have hold on yourself enough to be quiet enough
yeah,
to hear another person?
yeah.
Like,
People,
can you empty yourself enough to show up for another?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's a fucking skill right there.
it
Like that
is.
is a skill that needs to be honed and practiced.
Yes, and it's an act of love, is what it is.
Absolutely.
And it's people do not understand how um inaccurate and how many actual barriers and problems there are that are inherent to human communication. The fact that there appears to be a person here and a person there, and words, um, and existing contexts, right? Existing life experiences and existing like defined meanings that are in here in my living dictionary of self is different from your living dictionary of self, right? People don't understand how inherently flawed human communication is. It is very, very bad, right? Like compare that to two computers connected by a wire. You put in one thing over here and it goes over there. No, no noise, no misinterpretation, no nothing. It is pure transmission, communication, understood 100%, right? From me to you or you to me, or from mother to or from husband to wife or parent to child or coworker to boss, there is so much noise,
Mhm,
right? There is so much noise and so much room for misinterpretation. It's
mhm,
probably like if you averaged all communications of all humans on the planet, it's like probably maybe 20% of the time are people actually being understood, you
mhm.
know? And it's crazy how, and I just made that up, but like I'm trying to illustrate that very rarely are people capable of listening to understand, and then are we capable of really empathizing and responding in a way that makes sense.
Mhm.
It's so developing these skills as a coach, as a human, is huge. It will change your life and change the lives of everybody around you that you communicate with.
Can I share with you something that this reminds me of?
Yes.
I watched a movie whenever I was still living in my hometown, so it would have been like in high school time. And it was the movie called Waking Life by Richard Linklater. Do you know
Yeah.
that movie?
I've seen it. It's been a very, very long time. I saw it in high school.
Yeah, it was so it's a really great movie. Now I gotta watch it again because we're talking about it. But this reminds me of there's a part in the film where the main character, he's walking around talking to different philosophy type people, and he runs into this woman, and she's got kind of wild yellow hair, I want to say. And she talks about the word love, and she says, when you say I love you, when the words leave my mouth and they start to travel over to you and it hits your brain and your ears, and it then filters through all the versions of love that you've ever experienced, and then it settles into your heart as if like this is what it is for me.
Yeah.
And it's totally puts a picture to what you were just saying about how like our communication is just really, we're always filtering it through experiences. And
Yeah.
if we aren't with someone every moment of the day for their entire life, and even then there's still going to be interpretations of the experience that's so different, it's like of course there's not very good communication.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would also go to say it was funny because when you went into the example of the computer, I thought, wow, um what an interesting way you took that, because what I was going like the other way, and if I had an example I was going to bring up like an animal, like how I have two cats that I'm looking at right now, and how they can communicate without words, and they can communicate in such a like probably much more succinct way because their nervous systems are like tapped in, right?
Yeah. 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 I think there's a lot more clarity among animal communications because they're really all on the same operating system. I think about herd animals like deer or cows or elk or something like that, right? Their primary objective is to survive, right? And they all have the same instincts. So when one behaves a certain way, like if it raises its head up, everyone else is like, what did you hear? You're hearing something. Let's
Yeah,
hear. I want to hear too, right? It's not like, oh, maybe he's looking at a painting over there, you know? It's like, oh, I wonder, maybe he's raised up his head because of this or that. Or that. It's like, no, everyone is on the same page of like, man, there might be danger. Let's
yeah,
listen,
yeah,
you know. There's a lot less room for misinterpretation.
absolutely.
Yeah. Um, I want to go back to we're talking about coaching, we're talking about listening skills, and you mentioned leadership when it comes to standards and things like that. I want to talk about there's a coach who is extremely monetarily successful. I think he's I think he's a very good coach. Is he is a very, very good coach. I like him and I also don't like him sometimes, but Rich Litvin is like, an OG coach. And Rich, he in his at the beginning of his podcast, he says, uh what does he say? I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he's like, it didn't used to be called coaching. It used to be called leadership. And I absolutely love that because if you decide to be a coach, I feel like this should be communicated a lot more clearly, because of this whole Wild West environment that the thing is in. This piece of information can be really helpful as there's people coming at it for monetary reasons and for a lot of other reasons or status or appearance or whatever, right? But the truth is, if you decide to be a coach, you're deciding to be a leader, right? And I 100% believe that's true. And it's vital for people to understand that, and leadership carries a lot of responsibility.
Yep.
And you cannot, if you decide to be a leader, you don't get to be an average person anymore.
Yeah.
You have to hold yourself to a higher standard because other people are looking at you. You have decided to make an example of yourself for other people to follow and to teach them by your example. So in becoming a coach, you're deciding to become a leader, which means you need to hold yourself to these standards and be the example. If whatever you're coaching on, you can't, there's no room for hypocrisy. You can't be, teaching your clients one thing and then doing the opposite in your own so-called private life.
Mhm.
That's just completely unacceptable, honestly. You know, I feel like the world is where it is because of the lack of strong leadership, it is where it is because we have leaders who are hypocrites. We have leaders that betray the values that they espouse, and we see it publicly. We see it often, actually,
Mhm.
in the news and so forth. It's commonplace, and it's accepted, and it's unfortunate. It brings
And
everything.
I also think that in our culture, in this American culture, anyway, it's all I can really speak for, is that we have this like aversion to being led.
Yeah.
And that's silly because we can't be leaders all the time. We have to be led sometimes. That's why it's important for coaches to be coached, right? That's
Yes.
why, like, and there's a leader in this conversation. There's a leader in, like, I'm a mom and I'm leading my children. They're not leading me. There was a time they once were, certain times or whatever. But like, it's like, yeah, leadership is really a misunderstood and underappreciated role,
Yeah.
but the leader can't be the leader all of the time because we all need breaks. We all need to
True.
feel led to
Yes.
be a good leader.
Yes. 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 And I think I agree with that. And I think that's possible when everybody understands that they can and should be a leader. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a CEO. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. But when everybody, being a leader means taking ownership, taking responsibility over yourself and other people, right? And so it means that you are deciding to show up and be helpful, right? And what's great about the best leaders are they do know how to listen and they have humility, right? Because the wisdom of the group that you're leading, the wisdom of the collective is greater than the wisdom of the individual, right? So there's going to be situations that come up where the leader doesn't know the answer. Just because you're a leader, it doesn't mean that you know the answer all the time.
Right.
It means that you are willing to help find the answer and you're willing to work together towards the best outcome for everybody, right? It doesn't mean that you know the answer and that you know the best way to go. Sometimes you do, and that's great. And a lot of times you probably don't. And you need to be humble enough to admit that. And showing that kind of vulnerability and that humility is another really critical part of leadership,
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're an authoritarian, you're a dictator, you're an asshole,
Yeah.
right? So just claim that whatever you say is the right thing and you know best all the time, right? To be vulnerable, to be humble, to admit your mistakes and admit what you don't know is a huge act of leadership and makes you an even more powerful leader.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just an even greater example.
Yeah. In my coaching program right now, they talk about you're going to mess it up. And that's
Yeah,
you're
you're
going to
gonna
mess
mess
it up,
it up.
and that's okay. And I think having our leaders, our coaches in this program say that and say like, yeah, we still mess it up.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, isn't that the opportunity for humans to human, even
Yes.
in that, like I think about a couple weeks ago I had a situation with a girlfriend of mine, and we just misunderstood each other, and it caused like this whole moment in each other where it was like, wait, does she even want to be my friend anymore? And it really was this opportunity for us to show up for each other and be like, oh no, I still love you, we just screwed up a bit. And that was just it. It's like, we just messed up.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Like, and now
Yeah.
we're probably even closer because we had that beautiful opportunity to connect in a human way and be like, this is what I wanted. This is what you wanted. Oh, I hear you. Oh, I hear you. It's like, wow, that's really cool. And yeah, you're going to mess it up.
Yeah. Yeah, we
I
gotta.
can't, we've talked about this before, but like, I can't tell you how many times I've messed it up with a client.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah, anytime.
thank God that the client still returns, or thank God the client still like gives me the opportunity to be like, well, I really screwed that up.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And if there's a way I can make it up to you, maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe I just need to say it, and that's making it
Yeah.
up to you. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. You're 100% right. We need to give each give each other the room and the grace to be human, and that also needs to be given that grace also needs to be given to leaders 100% and coaches and everybody.
And then that's the sticky part, right? Because then how do we know when someone's just messing up, and when are they out of integrity? And like, that's the place where maybe regulation comes in. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. If how much grace do we give? You know, how many times does a person do we forgive a person till we decide, okay, they're really showing us who they are deciding to be here and now and potentially going forward. So we have to act on that reality, not on the benefit of the doubt for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I was thinking of going back to talking about coaching training, but maybe we can talk about something else.
Yeah, I will say my kids are going to be walking in the door here soon,
Oh,
so I
okay. Yeah,
need to
it's
wrap it up just a little bit. Um, what do you think?
yeah. Um, yeah, we don't need to jump into anything new. This was good.
Yeah.
Um, let's see if I can ask you a question. Um, hmm, hmm. What's what's the hmm, what's the biggest two things maybe like what's the biggest thing that you've learned about leadership and where did you learn that? And then maybe the other question could be something like um, what's been the most like revelatory thing you've learned in the training in the program that you're in right now?
Let's see. In regards to leadership, um, I mean, I could give a really, really deep answer to this, but being a mother and figuring out this the space between how do I completely give myself, because that is necessary, and then the like little wiggle space between I'm giving myself completely and fully, and also like res, resourcing myself, and also keeping myself resourced to know where that stops, and where like in order to be a leader, I really feel like you have to have solid footing in yourself and boundaries. Boundaries, 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 you know? And I feel like that was taught to us in massage school, but like more like here's this concept like way over there that you're gonna have to figure out. And basically it means like don't have sex with your clients. Like there's
Like,
so
don't
much
work underneath the drape. Come on.
yeah, like there's so much more to boundaries than that, right? And I really feel like one of my best friends who went through Al-Anon, she taught me a lot about boundaries. And then when my oldest son, we had an in-home therapist come and like navigate our house. That was she also really taught me a lot about boundaries. And I feel like that is where I learned a lot about leadership is like when you're ready to step into a role of leadership, you actually have to boundary up. Like you have to keep yourself as like a fortress so that you can actually provide.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. Like if you're giving too much or if you are just constantly looking out for everybody else, you run yourself down and you can't be available for them any longer. So, and also that kind of communicates a little bit of a lack of trust, to be constantly with them and teaching or they are present to them, versus stepping away and setting those boundaries of like, hey, I know you're strong. I know you're capable. I know you're headed in the right direction. So we're not going to do a session next week. You don't need me next week or whatever, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, yeah, that's really true. And what was that second part you were talking about? Oh yeah, like a fortress. Um, the other thing I'm sure that you've encountered is that like this is actually a really interesting, could lead to a really interesting conversation, but um, I think sometimes as a leader, you have to you have to maintain a certain output, not necessarily giving, but you need to project a consistent uh, image and a consistent teaching, right? So sometimes you might be feeling a certain way, but it would really go against what you're conveying and how you're leading and what you're doing to let those feelings or let that reality come out to whomever you're leading.
Mhm.
Um, this is a really tricky thing because it's I think it's very difficult to discern what to do when, because I think at the same time being really vulnerable and communicating your feelings and where you're at is also vitally important. But then there's other times where it's like, if you are really run down, if you're really having a hard time, you can't let that be seen or known in this moment. That's that kind of fortress you were talking about. You're like, I can't display that or communicate that right now. I need to be strong or I need to do this. I need to help my team, my family, my clients, whatever, in this way right now. And then I can take time, have that boundary, and take time to take care of myself and resource myself or engage with my feelings in private in a space where it is safe and comfortable to do that.
Mhm.
Uh, and that learning when to do each of those things, like when it's important and valuable and necessary to communicate your feelings and whatever hardship you might be going through, and that time where you don't do that is, I think, something that comes with experience, and it comes through actually being around great experienced practice leaders as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it model like you have to be around models, of like I mean, and this could go for everything, like models of masculinity, models of being feminine, models of mothers, and like sometimes it's modeling of what like not to do.
Yeah.
Um, you can see like, oh, I don't want to be that kind of massage therapist. I can't tell you how many times I have clients that tell me, my like I always ask my clients like if you've had a massage in the past, what did you like? What did you not like? And almost always in that what did I not like is my massage therapist talked to me the whole time.
Yeah.
And So, I mean, I create a relationship with my clients where if I'm having like a tired day or I'm having, whatever is going on, it's like, hey, how's it going today? Here's where I'm coming from, within reason, obviously. And then it's like, I just want you to know that this is where I'm at today. I'm going to still give you a great session. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm like, I am totally tapped out and we actually just need to reschedule.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like, I can't stop crying, so I don't think it's a good idea that we're doing this today. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes.
that's ever actually happened, but like that would be the thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like that that's part of it, is like knowing yourself, like you said with the date that you went on. It's like, can you empty and quiet yourself enough to actually have your own check-in with yourself to be like,
Yeah.
can I show up for this person today?
Right. Right. Yeah. Like, can I can I put myself aside and really be of service here right now? Or are my needs too great? And do my needs precede the needs of my client, or my group, or whoever? And if so, I need to make that decision and be clear about it.
And I feel like when you do connect with yourself in that way, there are times whenever life is actually easier. Like, I'll be going through a hard time. There's my kiddos. I'll be going through a hard time, but like being able to talk, like being able to they just distracted me and my thought just went out of my head. But hold on. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. So sometimes there are moments whenever I'm having a hard time, but being able to like focus on someone else's and their issues,
It's not
there
even
no, we're
four.
no. I said,
It's not
hold on a
even
second.
four.
Case in
Um,
point.
what's that?
Case in point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's sometimes where like if I'm having a hard time, listening to someone else is the best thing that could happen.
Yes. Yes. Hey, I'm Andrew. What's your name?
Malcolm.
Malcolm. I'm one of your mom's friends. We're colleagues. I'm a massage therapist also.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. Were you at camp or something? Did you have school? Camp?
Summer school.
Summer school.
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
get a snack, okay? Yeah.
Cool. Well, we could talk for a very long time.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up and we can pick up where we left off later.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you, well, here, let me stop this.